Yes, it has just been published. A lot of detail for us to wade through. It is 80 pages long. It breaks into 3 parts. The first just dealing with the context for all of this. They say that will reaffirm and restore Northern Ireland's as part of the United Kingdom. There's an annex on the constitutional arrangements, and there is also a second annex on additional measures to strengthen Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom. And let me just take you through it as I understand it. To be very clear, Jane, that this is not the deal between the UK government and the DUP that's being published. What the government has just put online is a command paper. That's really a declaration of the government's intentions in relation to policy. But that document, it really lifts the lid on what has been going on behind the scenes between the UK government and the DUP. And let me try and give you what I think are the headline points. The UK government is tabling legislation today to end post-Brexit checks on goods moving between Great Britain and Northern Ireland and remaining here in Northern Ireland. That is a significant change. Also, very importantly, the EU Withdrawal Act is going to be amended, meaning EU law will no longer apply automatically in Northern Ireland also. That, again, is a very significant change from what was negotiated between Rishi Sunak and the EU 11 months ago in what's called the Windsor Framework. But sources close to these negotiations are telling me that what's being spelled out by the UK government today will come as no surprise in Brussels, because they've been very closely informed the whole way through these discussions. Words like flexibility and pragmatism, I'm hearing a lot from parties on both sides, and they're telling me that healthier conversations have brought everyone to a better place, have established trust and a recognition of the need for a power-sharing government to be in place to safeguard the Northern Ireland peace process. So I suppose that strengthens the DUP's argument for the restoration of a devolved government before the end of this week. So we're beginning to see how Sir Geoffrey Donaldson has managed to bring the Democratic Unionist Party back on board with him. Just to recap on those 2 main points, the UK government is tabling legislation, we understand today, to end post-Brexit checks on goods moving between the UK, or between Great Britain and Northern Ireland and remaining here, and will also bring forward legislation to amend the Withdrawal Act, meaning EU law will no longer apply automatically in Northern Ireland. That goes an enormous distance towards addressing the concerns unionists have had about Brexit and about that trade border in the Irish Sea between Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
David, some will look at this and say, have the DUP played an absolute blinder here? Have they essentially created a situation where Northern Ireland has its cake and eats it? It's able to trade with the EU with fewer regulations, and it's not having to face this mythical border in the Irish Sea.
Yeah, well, we've had a very brief look at the document, but it is my understanding that the DUP has achieved the seemingly impossible, in that, as you say, Northern Ireland has that unique position of being able to do business within the UK's internal market, but also to do business within the EU's market. So capitalising upon the fact, perhaps, that Northern Ireland is the only part of the United Kingdom to share a land border with the European Union. But I suppose the other thing to really note is that many people will be surprised about the EU's position in all of this. The EU, I don't think they're going to be telling us today that they're thrilled about this, that there's been great progress. I think there will be a fairly muted response from them. But my understanding is that they've been kept very closely informed the whole way through this process. In fact, I understand the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, may be meeting Maros Sefcovic from the European Commission later today also to talk through some of this, and that we've moved to a completely different place. So after 8 years, or almost 8 years, of Brexit wrangling, it appears that Rishi Sunak just might have squared the circle. He might have achieved what Theresa May, Boris Johnson and Liz Truss couldn't. If this is all right and if it all sticks, he's got Brexit done.
David, thanks so much for that. We'll come back to you in a moment. Sam Coates, our Deputy Political Editor, is here in the studio. You know, has he got Brexit done? I mean, this could be seen as a massive a victory for him, a triumph for him, but there will be those within the Conservative Party, the Brexiteers, who will look at this and there'll be things that they are not happy with. So he still has that circle to square, hasn't he?
That's right. Look, if you get Stormont up and running in the next few days, like, nobody would dispute that is a massive, massive moment. It's a goal that Rishi Sunak wanted to achieve last year with the Windsor framework, and it will be a key part of his legacy. This document's just dropped, 80 pages, actually 136 different pages to go through. I'm going to take you to it in just a moment, but here's what I'm looking for in the big picture as we go through the day. Does it do what it says on the tin? Are the promises made to the DUP actually reflected in this command paper, and are they reflected in the letter of the law? I'm looking to see whether or not it creates complications for Brexiteers. Are they going to start worrying that you can't really have very much divergence from EU rules across Great Britain because it will cause more problems in Northern Ireland? And I think just generally, outside of this document, we're going to be looking at the House of Commons chamber in about half an hour when Chris Heaton-Harris, the Northern Ireland Secretary, talks about this document, just for the first reaction to what else is a really momentous moment, which is a Sinn Féin First Minister. It was never really meant to happen. The way Stormont was set up was designed to stop that, but here we have the Sinn Féin First Minister. It's a power-sharing arrangement for sure, but nevertheless, the person who holds the more prominent title does want to break up the United Kingdom. We've got a separatist in charge of a nation of the United Kingdom. It's a huge moment. What do MPs of all stripes think about that? But just back to the document, the promises are clear. Promises to, I think, provide a bulwark against that. If we just look at some of the things in the document, you look at the summary of measures, if we could just pull that up at the moment. And there you've got, I just was really struck, and I'm going to try and expand it to make it as big as possible there. This language, the measures will copper fasten Northern Ireland's integral place in the United Kingdom, fulfilling the Acts of Union of 1800, strengthen the UK's internal market and safeguard new protections into the future. So summoning as historic language as they can there, Jane, in order to really kind of slightly mask the fact that that border in the Irish Sea is a lot smaller, but to some degree it will still be there. And that's, I think, that some of the fine detail of that we'll be fighting over. But if we just go back to the... I just want to spin through something very quickly to give you an idea of the scope, the detail, the depth. If you just pull up the iPad if you pull up the document right now, look at this. I'm just going to scroll down. They list in alphabetical order all the different measures. There you can see A, B, C. On the next page, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, and then it keeps going all the way through to X. Now, I haven't read all of them. I can't tell you about all of them, but that's 23 different measures today. This is a huge package of very complicated, in some cases constitutional, in some cases trade, in some cases just political change that's about to be done to the way that the United Kingdom works together. In of itself, it's a really important moment. Let's see what it does, what it's meant to do, whether it does what it's meant to do. Let's see what else it does. Let's see if there's any backlash anywhere. And
it's going to be talked about in the House in the next hour, so we'll certainly be getting a reaction to it in the House. But also, let's go back to David Blevins. David, of course, there's also going to be a reaction from the EU and also a reaction from Dublin more specifically. The Irish Foreign Minister, Micheál Martin, is up in Belfast today, isn't he? He's going to be giving his reaction this afternoon.
Yes, and just listening to him on the radio this morning, he seemed fairly relaxed, and that's why I say the EU appears to have been kept abreast of the negotiations going on between the UK government and the DUP in an effort to have power-sharing government restored in Northern Ireland. The other thing I think we're going to hear a lot about today is the so-called Stormont break, which recognises what the DUP have often described as the democratic deficit. They've always argued that politicians here in Northern Ireland don't have enough scrutiny over the measures that were put in place as a result of Brexit. There's going to be further changes in relation to that, giving them a veto to some extent if those changes are impacting upon trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland moving forward. So all of that, I suppose, indicates to us that Sir Geoffrey Donaldson may not quite have removed the border in the Irish Sea between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, but he's certainly put a significant dent in it. And by giving politicians here in any restored power-sharing assembly their opportunity to further respond to any impact to trade as a result of that border, he's clearly indicating his party's intention to keep chipping away at this in an effort to make the impact of that border as little as possible in the days ahead.
David, thanks a lot for the time being. Let's come back to Sam Coates here. Sam, just talk us through the nuts and bolts of what's going to happen now. So this is a commands paper for those who aren't kind of across all the technical jargon. What does that mean? It then has to become a statutory instrument. Is there going to be a debate? You know, are MPs going to vote on it? What happens now?
So this is a document that sets out the government's intentions. As you say, that's got to be turned in the wrangler into laws. It's secondary legislation, so it's not great big bills that have to ping-pong between both houses of Parliament. I think it's just one vote in one of the chambers to do the actually quite large number of changes that need to take place in order to give this all effect. There's stuff going on in the Commons. So you've got Chris Heaton-Harris taking questions and setting out the broad details. He's the Northern Ireland Secretary, starting about 1:15. At the same time, as David Blevins was saying, David Cameron, the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, will talk to his opposite number in the EU just to check that they're happy. There was, lots of discussion, but, you're never quite sure your counterparties is happy until they say that they are, and clearly the EU have agreed to reduce the number of checks on goods that, in a way that they weren't happy a year ago. Right, something's changed. Something potentially quite big has changed, and that's important. So, did the EU swallow it? And then we're going to just take the temperature in the different bits of the political system, because it is a complicated set of changes in relation to Northern Ireland, a massive political moment in terms of not just Stormont going back up and running, but now another separatist First Minister running a joint power-sharing government in Northern Ireland. And to make this all, to grease the wheels, £3.3 billion found behind the back of the sofa by Rishi Sunak. Quite a lot of Tory MPs last night going, wouldn't have minded a slice of that. For my hospital, was told there was no money in the kitty, not much money for tax cuts, yet there it is for Rishi Sunak's legacy, their way of describing it. Nothing for me in my marginal seat. Let's see how it plays on the backbenches as you put somebody, Michelle O'Neill, in the top slot job in the Stormont Assembly.
But theoretically, she could be in that job by the weekend, by early next week?
Yeah, I think it'll be quite a big moment. It'll be quite a big visual spectacle, not just to see MLAs, members of that assembly pouring back into the chamber, but to see Michelle O'Neill and their DUP counterpart, Deputy First Minister. We don't know who that is. It's probably not going to be Jeffrey Donaldson. Probably has to nominate somebody. So there will be a pair of leaders, one from Sinn Féin, one from the DUP. We wait to see who that figure is. We wait to see who the Speaker of the Northern Ireland Assembly is as well. But that will be the symbol of a new and ever so slightly different United Kingdom to the one that we had the week before and the week before that. New faces, new direction, separatism from one part of the government in Northern Ireland, a new constitutional settlement. It's a very, very big moment.